Good morning.
Good morning.
Hi, Peter.
Hi, how are you?
Good. Good. So I'm Geneva Taylor. I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm from the Office of Police Accountability. I'm a community engagement specialist. I am over here at the OIG office, and I am going to start with just saying thank you so much for attending this sit-and review. We really appreciate you guys being present. We know that it is during these times, it's really important to share your views and your experience with Seattle Police Department with this office. So we really appreciate you guys coming out. Since the death of George Floyd, officers have really been under a lot in the history of our country. We have really been dealing with a lot of structural and racial injustices in our country. So during this time, the Office of Inspector General is partnering with Community Police Commission and with Office of Police Accountability to really gather and gather perspectives, input, and questions from community concerns with SPD response to racial injustice in Seattle. The thoughts you share with us today will help us to conduct the review on SPD's police response that is centered in community concern. This review is called a sit-and review. This term is used this term has been used in airline and medical industries. A sit-and review event. A sit-and event is significant when a major tragedy has happened. Or has been done. In airlines, industries use this to figure out the root cause of a plane crash, or a medical industry for a terrible patient's death that should have not happened. I'd like to highlight the purpose of this review is to look at systems. It is not a disciplining officers' misconduct. Those types of allegations and investigations are conducted with the Office of Police Accountability. The goal of today is to hear from you. So we will not be answering questions about specific incidences, policies, or actions at this time. However, if you have any questions, we will do our best to take them down and directly speak with you. Directly speak with you. The goal of this sit-and review is to identify gaps and flaws in the system that contribute to how protests have occurred within the city so that we can address them. We want to create a community participation to access system flaws that can be challenged and longstanding assumptions during policy practices, and start building ways to build more positive ways of interacting with community. The complexity of this review is thorough, and it's necessary to require that this work happens and community listens. This is a listening forum, is the first one, and it's complex. The goal is to take community input and priorities and infuse them within this process. The oversight accountability systems have already received much appreciated input from feedback from community members. So we really want to take this time to say thank you for offering your responses this far. We also want to make sure that we connect with you and for all those who are actually not on social media. So we've received a lot of feedback, but we want to also offer another avenue to give feedback. And so to learn more about what is going on in the surroundings during this sit-and review. So let's go into some of the participation instructions. You will notice that your mics have all been muted at this time. The host will be unmuted, and your mic, when you are called upon, will be unmuted at that time. We are asking for each person to provide the following before beginning to speak as part of the analysis of this review. So that would be your race, that would be your gender, and the neighborhood or town that you reside in. I also want to let you know that this time is actually recorded, so you will be recorded. So I think that's important to know. We would like to hear about your experience with SPD, especially during the last couple of months during the protests and demonstrations. Each speaker will have 3 minutes, right, Anthony?
Yes.
3 minutes. This way we can hear from everyone as much as possible from everyone. We may also you can also type your comments and inputs into the chat room, into the chat area. The information will be gathered by OIG and will be reviewed and considered later. When providing your comments, please try to use the following. So here are some of the questions. I'm going to just go right on in. What would you like to share about how police responded to recent protests? The next question, and you do not have to answer all of these questions. It could just be one of these questions. Did the police do something well or poorly in responding to protesters that you would like to comment on? Another question is, how did police actions during the protest impact you or impact your impressions on them? Sorry, let me read that again. How did police actions during the protest impact you or impact your impressions of them? And the last question is, what should police be doing in responding to protesters that would promote public trust?
And the questions are also included in the chat.
Oh, okay. So the questions are also included in the chat.
As well as instructions on how to raise their hand.
As well as instructions on how to raise your hands, because that's how we will be calling on folks, is by looking at some of those hands that are being raised.
So they can begin to.
So we will start with the first person who is raising their hand and would like to have some comments, have some concerns, listen to. How do you tell?
The hands should pop up over here.
Okay. So this is really a time for us to listen to community. And so this is a time for you to speak into some of the experiences that you have had. I see some folks typing, which is cool. I don't see the questions in the chat. Okay. So we're going to get those questions in the chat for you all. And I think you can answer or leave comments that do not actually address these questions, correct, Anthony? Mm-hmm. So this is just if people are wondering what kind of questions, you can answer some of these questions, but they can also go with just your experience that you've had with SPD during the demonstrations. So it doesn't have to be necessarily these questions.
Can I connect, Dr. Gale, can I connect via computer using voice and audio?
Yes.
Okay. So, Dr. Gale, do you have a comment so that you can't connect to the computer?
That's unmuted here.
Yeah.
Hello, Gail, can you hear us?
It looks like Dr. Gale's having problems. I'm not sure if she wants to speak, but she did indicate she's having some problems connecting. Hello, Dr. Gale, are you there? Thought I heard you. Yes, Mr. Henry.
That works too.
Yeah, are you able to hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. I hope this is relevant because I didn't have any personal contact with police during the protests. However, a lot of the people that I either work with or people that are friends or family members had varying reports of how, in some cases, they felt that the police were over aggressive, like wound up tear gassing them for no reason, and kind of took a somewhat tense situation and intensified it. Now, on the other hand, I've also heard from people that thought that the police had showed a lot of restraint, considering they were getting, bottles thrown at them and things like that. But I think that the media plays an important role, maybe depending on what news station you listen to, as to what you see, because I think that helps shape what people think is really going on with the protests, in addition to shaping their overall perspective when it comes to law enforcement in Seattle.
Okay,
Hope that adds to it.
we appreciate it. We have Aisley
Thank you
Cooney.
so much. We're going to go to Aislinn Coney.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes,
we can.
yes, we can.
Hi, I'm White. I live in Lower Queen Anne. And what else? I don't remember. But I have a lot of personal experience during these protests with SPD. It is my complete and total opinion that SPD is entirely too aggressive, attacking protesters without reason. A water bottle hitting riot gear does not require tear gas, does not require targeted arrest, does not require beating people with batons. Chief Best recently said nobody was hurt. I would like to completely reject that. On several occasions, I myself have been hurt, and I've witnessed a lot of other pain. And I want to start by saying this abuse is not new for people of color. It's new for me. And I'll share with you some of my experience now, because that's what I can speak on. On June 6th, I was sitting with a group of peaceful protesters outside of the precinct before it had turned into Chaz Chop. And a group of riot cops from the front at their barricade put on their gas masks and charged forward. And a group of bike cops came from the back and started hitting people with their bikes, trapping them under their bikes, gas bombs, pepper bombs, and flashbangs directly into a crowd. We all became disoriented, and then I was grabbed and shoved by several officers, spun around and pepper sprayed in the face at less than 1 foot away for multiple seconds. As I turned away, I was pepper sprayed across the back of my neck, my ears, and just all of my clothes were covered in pepper spray. As I was walking away, disoriented already from the attack that they had done, and I ended up having to go to the ER because, as you may not know, a lot of people are actually allergic to that kind of pepper spray and can die from it. So that's something to think about. Also, I've been going through the Office of Police Accountability for my complaints about this brutality that I experienced. However, I know that 91% of complaints last year were dismissed as unfounded. So I don't feel comfort in that. Next, on July 25th, I was involved in a protest away from any damage or destruction when I was directly targeted. I was shoved around by officers, pushed, shoved, and beat with a baton. Then I was pushed backwards during this as I began to panic because I'm being attacked. I had been pushed into a group of officers and kind of fallen to the ground. I'm laying on the ground screaming. And then I'm dragged on my face through the gravel. My limp body is just dragged by officers through the gravel. I am a 115-pound, 5'4" woman who poses no threat to many, many officers in riot gear. So I reject any characterization of them as having any sort of restraint. Finally, after that, I'm shoved backwards so that I fall to a seated position onto this little wall that was behind me as I'm forced into that position, which the officers then said, okay, then you can be arrested. They threw me face down on the ground. 4 officers tackled me. 1 had their knee on my back, and they arrested me, hands behind my back, with my face in the dirt, in the gravel, and left me like that, first of all, and ripped my face mask covering medical mask off, while many of the officers refused to wear medical masks, ripped off my helmet and my gear, some of which I did not get back, and I was taken to jail. When I said I haven't done anything to be arrested, a particular officer, Roxanne Zett, said, you shouldn't have been here. She made it very clear that my crime was protesting. Then we are taken in the police transport vans by SPD. People are covered in pepper spray, tear gas. Someone was falling in and out of consciousness, and we ended at the West Precinct, where we sat for 5 to 6 hours in a concrete cell all together. during a pandemic with our hands cuffed behind our backs for that long in a stress position. I still have not recovered full feeling in my left thumb from this experience, and I have nerve damage in my right shoulder. Then I was held overnight in a holding cell with no blankets, no food, and the only source of water was a fountain above the toilet that we were all too afraid to use because of coronavirus, which we were more exposed to in the jail anyways. And then when I'm trying to be bailed out after sitting there all night in a holding cell with a lot of other women, I am transferred to Kent, even though my boyfriend was there bailing me out at 6:45 a.m. They told me, no one is here for you, no one is bailing you out, and you're being transferred to Kent. So no, the officers are not showing restraint, and in fact, they are reveling in our abuse and reveling in what they get to do to us. They yelled at me, they mocked us. I saw a woman who had multiple seizures and was screaming for her medication all night long, which she did not receive. She was mocked. Officers said she was mean to her. She was completely mistreated and isolated and set by herself to have her seizures. She thought she was going to die. Another person that I was with had a severe neck injury from SPD attacking her. Another small girl like me who poses no threat to them and was practicing her constitutional rights and possibly needs surgery for this, was told she needed medical care when she arrived at King County Jail and never got it. She stayed there overnight just like me, handcuffed, and then sat in a jail cell and never got medical treatment. I told the medical officers at King County Jail, when they asked me, do you have a seizure condition? I said no, but she does. I listed her first and last name, and I said she needs help, and they refused it. Nobody gave us medical attention. I went home with the same amount of gravel in my wounds that I showed up with. It is an abomination what is happening, and there is no one keeping them accountable. OPA is doing nothing about it. Who's going to stop them? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for speaking with us. We're going to go to Dr. Gale.
Hello, Dr. Gale. I think you look to be unmuted now. Okay, let's go to Seth while we work with Dr. Gale.
Okay, we're going to go to Seth.
Here we are. Hi. Sorry if I'm a little disjointed. I am going against medical advice by being on this to begin with. So my name is Seth. I'm white. I use he/him pronouns. I believe the SPD's response has been unbelievably aggressive and disproportionate to the threat that they faced. I am currently recovering from a severe concussion and permanent hearing loss as a result of the massive amounts of explosive devices SPD used on July 25th. I guess a little bit of background about me and where I come from within all this. I graduated with a degree in public health a year ago and currently a graduate student in another department and doing research on public health infrastructure within the protests. So I was there really to see what the sort of impact was of what was going on surrounding both police responses and how the protest was working for safety. And what has kind of become clear throughout all this is that any precautions that protesters were putting into effect through all of these protests were being undermined by police at every step of the way. Every single place where protesters were trying to find means of protecting themselves either from physical damage from outside forces, which the police refused to protect them from, whether it's car attacks or people with guns coming in, etc., to general COVID-19 responses we heard from the last speaker. All of these things have been undermined by police responses. I have also seen protests around the country from just my time traveling and growing up in different parts of the US and seeing what protest response from police look like. I've also traveled a lot of the world and seen protests in other countries, particularly in Palestine. And one of the most fascinating things that I've seen is how similar the SPD response is to the Israeli Defense Force responses to Palestinians, where even though, regardless of where you are on the political spectrum, of it, it's pretty horrific to think that SPD's response to protesters is so similar to an ongoing conflict zone that is considered, a hot zone, regardless of your political affiliation in that particular context. The response, especially on the 25th, was the most aggressive I've ever seen, where they seem to have dismissed any sort of historical tactics of dispersal and more towards aggression and punishment. Particularly, there was a moment with kettling that I witnessed where a friend of mine described it as feeling like a herd of antelope being hunted by lions, where they were chasing people at speeds that people could not maintain, picking off the slowest people at the end of the line while continuing to throw tear gas into the crowd. And the anxiety-inducing moments that created, I think, for myself and other people was beyond any sort of capacity that could make any sense. I have worked service sector and had things thrown at me recently, and I've never thrown tear gas at anyone. I have, the disproportionate force that exists for any crime should not be a piece of this whole situation should not be occurring. No matter what the crimes that are being committed, police are paid in hazard pay to be able to handle situations with a cool head, which they are clearly incapable of doing, as displayed here. I believe that does it. Thank you for making this time.
Thank you, Seth. When I'm saying thank you, I really do mean thank you for sharing your guys' story. I know that it takes a lot of bravery to come on and to actually communicate and talk about things that have been traumatic for you all. So I really do appreciate and thank you for sharing. I think the next person we're going to is who?
Try Dr. Gale again.
We're going to try Dr. Gale again.
Maybe we got it this time.
Hi.
Okay.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. So I came out early and often in the first 2 weeks of the George Floyd protests in Seattle. This is Howard Gale. I live on Lower Queen Anne, male, Caucasian. I actually stopped coming out because of the degree of police violence. For me, I'm 65 years old. It was just far too much of a risk. The pattern that I saw was mostly centered around the police trying to control people's movements, where they went, where they didn't go, creating absolutely unnecessary violent confrontation. And I just want to take this opportunity to read something, just a very brief sentence here. Quote, "By the end of the evening, even the most outrageous stories seemed dulled by repetition. There were beatings in jail, business owners tear gassed outside their stores, innocent bystanders arrested, peaceful protesters silenced." That statement is not from 2020. That is from December 9th, 1999, during the WTO. My point in reading that is 21 years later, we are actually doing things that are worse, far more preventing of people's free speech rights. We did massive studies. We had 18 hours of public testimony back in 1999. And yet here we are, not at the same place, but at a worse place. So I guess the question I have for the OIG today is, what is going to be different this time? The amount of police violence that was unleashed is just horrifying. I witnessed on video the recent attack at the end of July on the woman who had epilepsy, and the fact that at least 13 police officers stood around her body, her limp and lifeless body, as she suffered a seizure. So I really don't understand what's going on here. This is not some kind of polite debate about who did what wrong. I just want to point this out because this is often lost in the discussion. Protesters are not an organized taxpayer entity. Protests are always going to be chaotic and disruptive and inconsistent. The people who we pay to do a job and take risks and be consistent are the police. So this is not a question of trying to figure out on the scales which side did more wrong. It is the police's responsibility to actually respond in ways that make sense and protect free speech rights, and they did the opposite. And last thing, I was actually there, I forget the exact night, it was early June, when in about a 10-minute period between midnight and 12:10 in the morning, the police on Pine Street between 11th Avenue and Broadway unleashed over 100 blast balls. Blast balls are devices that have seriously injured a lot of people. They blew a guy's face off back in 2016. Why are we still doing this? Anyway, that's the end of my comments for now.
Thank you so much for sharing. I think the next person we're going to, Anthony, is Miss Reverend Walden. Again.
Reverend Walden, are you unmuted? Yes. Yes, you are unmuted. Go ahead, Reverend Walden. Go ahead, Reverend Walden.
She might be having some difficulties. You're unmuted on our end.
Yeah, we see you're unmuted on our end. Okay, we'll come back to Reverend Walden. We'll work with her to get her unmuted. Harmony is next. Harmony?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
we can. Hi, Harmony.
I just want to add to what's been said. I was there on July 25th, and this is very emotional because
Yeah.
we were attacked. We were terrorized. We'd marched peacefully for hours. We were done, and the police rolled in there with one mission, and that was to harm us, to assault us. I was there with the moms group. There was a group of us standing in front trying to protect other people from this assault from the police. And just because now this happened, to some white middle-aged women, it shouldn't be getting more attention. This has been happening to the Black and brown communities for as long as we can remember. So I don't want to bring attention to my story specifically, but if that can help with the police being out of control and attacking us. I reached down to help a man. They had pepper sprayed in the face, and I was tackled from behind by 3 police. I was helping somebody, and they tackled me and threw me to the ground. They ripped off my face mask. They ripped my shirt. Before that, while I was standing, and we're trying to back up, and they're very aggressive, and we're saying we're trying to move back. I was pepper sprayed in the face at least 4 times, and then the police officer reached out, shoved me backwards as we're trying to move backwards. I had a ball blast thrown directly into my leg, which ripped a hole in my shin, which went untreated because I was arrested illegally, held in jail for over 9 or 10 hours. No treatment for any of the chemical burns. I couldn't open my eye for hours in the transport van. Another woman asked the police officer to move the hair out of my face because we were handcuffed, and they ignored her and said, "Oh, you got pepper sprayed?" We all did. In the holding cell, I watched them bring in an unconscious woman, the woman who had seizures. She was unconscious. They brought her in, laid her on the floor, and walked away. No medical treatment. She laid there, and the only people that seemed concerned were the other people in the cell with me, and we were really concerned about her laying there unconscious. We didn't know if she was alive. We didn't know if she was breathing, and they just left her there. We weren't given masks. We asked for masks, and they said, "Oh, do you want some of those?" And they finally brought us masks. After hours of asking for water, they brought us a water bottle to share during a pandemic. That's what we were offered. And when we said, we're not comfortable with that, there's a pandemic, they were going to pass it around. And then the officer said, "I'll see what I can do." And he left and never came back. I mean, just the way they terrorized us and abused us. And then I was told I could make bail. My boyfriend sent someone down to pay bail, and we were told that the jail was on lockdown, so I wouldn't be getting out until the next morning. Then at midnight, they came and got me. put me in jail clothes, and sent me out on the street with a dead cell phone and said, good luck. So my case is not unusual. It's far worse things have happened to other people, but I want you guys to understand that we were standing there and they attacked us. We were nowhere near any of the vandalism or the destruction. If they were coming to find people that broke windows or set fires, that's not how you do an investigation. That's not how you find the guilty party. They attacked us. And who's going to hold them accountable? If I went and attacked 3 police officers and tackled them and hit them and pepper sprayed them, do you think I'd be sitting here? Why are they allowed to do this to citizens? It's disgusting.
Thank you so much for sharing your experience. We are going to go to Reverend Walden.
Yeah, that could get that.
Reverend Walden? Are we still having trouble with you? I can't hear you. Try it now. Go ahead, Reverend Walden. Try *6 and see if that unmutes your phone. Okay, while we work with
Megan Berry. We're going to move to Megan Berry, where we're still waiting to see how to fix Reverend Walden's issue. So, Megan, are you?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Thank you. My name's Megan. I'm from Gig Harbor. I went up to the Seattle protests multiple times to stand in solidarity with the Black Lives Matter movement. The first one I went to was immediately after George Floyd was murdered. I believe it was on May 25th. And it was a normal march. I've been to many marches before until the police blocked us in at Westlake and pepper sprayed us and threw glass bombs. And I've never experienced that before. I was completely shocked. It took me almost an hour to get back home because my car was parked off of Fifth Avenue and the police had blocked off everything. I was walking through the pouring rain by myself for more than an hour. I went to several other protests after that because after experiencing that, I saw firsthand just how traumatizing and horrifying our police treatment of Black and Indigenous people, and then also of the protesters really was. So it really was unfortunately very eye-opening for me. I was also one of the folks arrested on the July 25th protest. I was moving backwards with the crowd and following an officer's orders. He said move back, and I moved back. I was filming him, and I don't think he liked being filmed. So he arrested me and initially said that I wasn't moving back, except that I actually was, and I have video of me moving back. And then later, my charge was failure to disperse. So when I was arrested, I saw multiple protesters that had been arrested prior to me, including one young man who was sitting on the sidewalk bleeding from a head wound, and no one was getting any medical attention. I asked what they were doing, and they were like, he's fine. When I got to the jail, I saw multiple other protesters with wounds, with their eyes swollen shut, with scrapes and bleeding. Everybody was coughing uncontrollably from being tear gassed repeatedly. I was held in a holding cell with multiple other women. To echo what Harmony has said, they asked for water. and no water was brought while I was in the cell. I was transferred to the King County Jail. At around, I think, 8 p.m. And while I was being processed, the nurse commented on how dehydrated I was. I was shaking uncontrollably. When they tried to do my fingerprints, it took quite a long time because they could not stop shaking, even though I made every effort to comply. I was put into a cell with 3 other women who had already been in prison for, or in the jail for, I believe, 6 to 18 months. There were no mask requirements whatsoever. So I was endangering them just by my presence. I wore a mask the entire time, and I did my best to stay away from them and not infect them. But it was horrifying to me that essentially there's no precautions being taken. Even the nurse who was processing me, I saw her walking around without even wearing a mask and talking to coworkers. So if a nurse isn't even going to wear a mask, nobody else is. At around, I think it was around 11, I had just fallen asleep because I thought I would, I thought that I'd be staying the night, but at 11, I was ordered out. I was given back my clothes, which were completely soaked in pepper spray. And I told several different officers who were processing me to go out. I said, I need my backpack. It has my car keys in it. And they said, oh, that went to the evidence office. And I said, okay, well, how do I get that? And they're like, well, it's not open. And apparently it's only open on Tuesdays and Thursdays during regular business hours. So this was almost midnight on a Saturday. And I said, I don't have a way to get home. My car was parked over a mile away from the jail. And the officer actually said, good luck. And exactly the same as what happened with Harmony. In fact, very, very well could have been the same officer. I walked outside and I was terrified. But I was lucky to be able to be helped. I thought that I was going to have to walk through downtown Seattle by myself at midnight and be unable to get home. Fortunately, my phone was working and I was able to get home safely, but I know that's not the case for a lot of other people.
Thank you so much for sharing your story.
There's some people from Sound that they have some comments.
Okay, are there some folks from Sound Mental Health who have some comments they'd like to share? Do you see their hands up?
I got a text message, so. So we don't have any at this time. Okay, is there any other comments? And we thank everyone for the comments we received thus far.
Yeah.
Oh, and by the way, I failed to introduce myself. My name is Anthony Fennell. I'm with the Office of Inspector General. And my role here is in part to work with the community, reach out to the community. So that is one of the reasons why we set this up today, as was explained earlier. One of the, and I put this information in the chat as well, but one of the other steps in this process will be that after we've gathered all the information, after we've conducted the review, the information will go to a review panel, which will be made up of various individuals from within the community and within the accountability system. And if I'm sorry, someone speaking, please mute yourself. If you wish to speak before directly to that panel and provide your first-hand account, I would ask that you send your contact information to our Sentinel event email. It's located in the chat. It's at sentinelevent@seattle.gov. And either myself or one of the other staff members will reach out to you to help coordinate when the review panel is convened, so that you may present directly to those individuals who will then be making the recommendations for the changes that need to occur. So thank you. Do we have, okay, I see Mr. Brown, Andre Brown. Go ahead, sir.
Wait, can I defer first to Bill Nolan? He's from Sound 2. He had his hand up before me. Is that okay?
Okay, I didn't see him, but okay. Bill Bolin. Yeah, I didn't see his hand raised, so I don't see him on the list here. So, Mr. Brown, go ahead for right now, because I don't see it.
It's in the chat. His name is William Nolan.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Got you. I see it now. It's in the chat. Okay, go ahead, Mr. Nolan.
You're on mute, Mr. Nolan. You're on mute.
Where's Mr. Nolan? I don't see.
Okay,
Oh, there you are.
I believe I'm unmuted now. I was under impression that the hosts would unmute me when it was my time to speak. Anyway, my name is William Nolan. I go by Bill. I'm a male. I'm white. I live in the Rainier Beach neighborhood in the south side of Seattle. Anything that I could relate firsthand pales in comparison to what was stated already by the people who were direct victims of police violence. However, I did witness episodes, actions that were basically identical to what was being described in the streets. I was not arrested, so I was not able to witness what happened in the jails. But one thing that I found particularly upsetting about the police violence, was the enjoyment that they seemed to take in it. They were smiling and, high-fiving each other, and that indicates a total lack of discipline, for one thing. I mean, when state violence is legitimate, and I am by no means trying to suggest that it was legitimate or legitimately employed in this case, but when state violence is legitimately employed, it should be done in a solemn and regretful mood. That was not the case here. These were people who enjoyed ganging up and beating on other people. Mm-hmm. And the police need to be held accountable. I have done quite a bit of reading since the George Floyd uprisings began about the entire institution and the culture of policing in this country. It is, by the way, the police is as a formal practice originated as people empowered to capture escaped slaves. And there are numerous mechanisms in place, including the very powerful police unions, guilds, etc., which work to override or counteract any actions of governance that are undertaken by citizen review boards or even by the civil government of the municipality or whatever the jurisdiction in which those police operate. The whole thing, the entire institution of policing needs to be disassembled and rebuilt from the ground up. And what we have witnessed on the streets of Seattle and in the jails of Seattle, and I dare say probably in the emergency rooms of Seattle, is ample evidence of that assertion that policing needs to change. Thank you. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we're going to go to Andre Brown now.
Okay, hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, okay. I guess before I begin, I want to apologize if I come off too passionate about this, but I've been kind of restrained on this issue and haven't been able to speak on this issue, so I apologize beforehand. So I guess I'll begin with, criticism. So the only criticism I have is that answering one of the questions of how did police respond? Did they respond poorly? I think the police responded poorly, and I think this is probably a leadership issue more than actual police people on the lines and stuff like that. In letting go of the 6-block radius of Capitol Hill. I think that was the absolutely worst decision. It endangered people's lives. It put Seattleites who live in that area in danger of not having 911 emergency personnel to respond to. I think that was one of the worst decisions, and I again think that is a leadership issue and not actually a police issue. Secondly, on the question of did police show restraint? I have been, I guess, watching the live streams all throughout kind of the protest and even till now going on in Portland, so to speak, and I've seen some of the most angry, vitriol things thrown at police officers, which police officers are humans too. So I kind of have questions as well. Do we see police officers as humans? Are they supposed to be more than human? Because humans, we're not supposed to be taking this amount of anger, this amount of vitriol, this amount of just anger directed at you for an hour. I want to ask everyone out there, can they do the police officer test? Can they stand there for an hour and just get screamed at? You should die. You should kill yourself. You are a bastard. Can you take that for an hour? I want to see if you are able to do that. And then let's have a conversation about restraint. Let's have a conversation about how you should see yourself. Because you take off the uniform, these guys are humans. I have not seen a compassion approach to this issue yet. So again, should we ask these guys to be more than humans? Because if that's the job, then that's the conversation we should have. And thank you. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Andre Brown, for speaking your story and experience. We are going to go to Reverend Walden at this time. She's unmuted. Yeah.
Reverend Walden? Shows you're muted now. Go ahead, Reverend Walden. Okay, let's go to Harmony while I'm trying to fix it. Reverend Walden.
Okay, we are going back to Harmony.
Hi, sorry, it's muted. I just want to respond a little bit to what Andre said. I understand being passionate, but I could stand there for an hour. I'm a special ed teacher. We get abused, we get yelled at, we get things thrown at us. We don't assault children. We don't assault adults. We are professionals, and we know that with our training, We know what's appropriate behavior and what's an appropriate response. Nurses and doctors also show the same restraint. Why don't we hold police to the same standard? And I'm just going to say, if you weren't there, if you weren't physically assaulted and attacked for simply standing there, there's no excuse for their behavior. Absolutely none.
Okay, do we have another? Thank you, Harmony. Is there another hand? It looks like Harriet, but no. Okay.
Yeah, it's Reverend Walden still, but I'm not able, I don't know why she can't get through.
Someone else.
You have any other
Comments, Harmony, before we move on?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you. I think, did Andre re-raise his hand?
Did you want to speak again, Andre?
Yeah, I think so. Unmute him and let's ask him. Did you have something else to say, Andre?
Oh, no, sorry, my hand was still up from speaking.
Okay.
Sorry, I apologize.
Okay, thank you.
Paisley.
Paisley. Coney?
Yeah.
Okay, we're going back to Coney.
I just, again, wanted to state that I do not expect officers to be more than human, but I do expect them to engage and act with humanity, which I have not seen whatsoever. I'm sorry, but protesters yelling at you, even, excuse my language, saying fuck you, is not a reason to assault, arrest, terrorize, tear gas, pepper spray, flashbang. We don't have those kinds of weapons. All we have is our voices. Protesters yelling, that's a protest. If you can't handle that, should you really have a badge and a gun? I mean, come on. These arguments are just ridiculous. And to come into an area and speak on that with survivors of police assault and police violence and police brutality, I think is just a terrible thing to do. And I think it deeply affects the people who have experienced it. And I find it inappropriate for this type of hearing anyways. But my real world question is, like, I know the OPA is not going to do anything for us. And I have fear about what can the OIG do? Like, what is going to happen? We have thousands of people with testimony speaking at every public hearing and making reports and doing all this work, and nothing is happening. And people are what about the retroactive arrests that officers are engaging in? Like, people who are speaking out, we are afraid. I'm afraid that they're going to come and try to arrest me at my home for speaking out and for putting my name out there and speaking to press or doing anything. Like, we are scared when we make these choices to speak to you and to others, and we need a promise that that someone's looking out for us, someone's going to protect us, and someone's going to do something about it. Because right now it feels like I'm shouting and putting my name, putting a big target on myself, and I don't know for what. Is something going to happen? Can y'all help us?
That's a really good question. That is a very good question, Anthony, to us. I think that's part of what we're doing here, and what we are trying to do here is to hear from community, for sure. I think that that makes it really challenging in some ways, because as much as these offices are working to make sure accountability is happening for officers, it is hard when it doesn't always go the way community would like it to go. And it makes it hard then to build more trust for you guys to come back to us again. So these are questions that not only you ask us, but it's also questions we ask ourselves. So I think that's important to know. I also want to say that this platform is for everyone. Even if the opinion of another does not rub you the right way and is not something that you particularly think should be on this platform, it is for everyone to speak into, even if it does not match your viewpoints or opinions. I think it's important to be able to hear and sit in a room, even if it digs at you the wrong way, to be able to hear and for everyone to have a voice. I think that's really important, even if they are lies. They are someone else's story. So I think that's important, to be able to respect and be able to hear someone else's story, even if you feel like it is offensive to you. I think it's important to be able to hear folks. And I think we're trying to create that type of space here. So I think our next person that we had is Dr. Gale. Okay.
Dr. Gill?
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. I do have to respond to what was just said. The police have a huge public relations machine. They have a whole department that spends hundreds of thousands of dollars just on PR. So the notion that officers or other individuals representing either the city or the SPD have an equal voice on this platform is just absurd. We're talking about people who are being disadvantaged, who have actually been oppressed, and to say that people that have resources get an equal voice or should share their thoughts is just, I think it's horrifying. But let me move on from that. I do want to address directly what I actually do have some empathy and sympathy for you. I think what I've seen happen over the years is that often as a line officer, you don't see the decisions and the actions that are taken by other officers. And you get the rock or the bottle. But what you didn't see, and what I have seen repeatedly over the decades, is other officers, maybe not you, doing things to torque up a situation and to actually create violence. I have witnessed people, as we've heard the testimony of lots of very brave people here today, testify firsthand to absolutely egregious abuse, to what is virtually torture. So I do think, Mr. Brown, you have to be respectful of the fact that, as other people have said, you are being paid big bucks to keep your temper and to act responsibly. And again, I'm going to say this, when 13 officers stand around in broad daylight and witness a woman seizing, my niece has epilepsy. I actually do know, as a psychologist, I know what it's like when someone is having a seizure. They are usually conscious. That woman was writhing on the ground and unconscious at various points, regaining consciousness. This happened for hours. 13 police officers stood over her. 13 police officers. So I am sorry, Mr. Brown. When someone tells me there's a few bad apples and 13 people have no empathy and actually watch someone suffer, that is 100% bad apples.
Thank you, Gail. Thank you, Dr. Gail.
Okay. Shasta.
Shasta. What a beautiful name. We are coming to you now.
Okay, am I here?
Yes, you are. I can hear you.
My name is Shasta Wilson. I live in Shoreline. I have not attended the protest, so I didn't want to take time from people who had, but I have kind of a related concern. I have worked as a photojournalist over the years, nationally published at times, and I considered going down to the protests to capture pictures, capture the story, and see what was going on. But I heard a lot of credible reports from people that I directly know about attacks, who were down there, about attacks on medics and journalists. I have a very high-risk family member, so the idea of potentially getting arrested while trying to take pictures and then spending the night in jail, maybe with other people without masks, and then having to come home, you know, I have to admit, in the end, I made the cowardly choice and I didn't go. So that is a pretty clear example of the chilling effect on being able to get those stories. So I've been watching kind of closely, I guess, from a distance, from up here in Shoreline, talking to people I know and so forth, trying to figure out what's going on. And then this story came out where the Seattle police are trying to subpoena unpublished pictures and stories from, I think it's 5 news outlets. I find that horrifying. That is not a bad decision made in the heat of the moment. That is not, you know, maybe things got a little out of control. I mean, these stories I'm hearing seem very unacceptable, but I didn't see them myself. That is a cold decision made by the department later on to do something that has the potential to have an unbelievably chilling effect on journalists. And I'm very concerned about that. I'm concerned about the way that that looks. I'm concerned about the effect that that may have. I'm concerned about who else may not feel safe going and doing their job to cover these protests. That's my comment.
Thank you so much, Shasta, for speaking into that. I think we have Kay Cole.
Hi, my name is Kat. I live in Northgate, Black. I have so many thoughts about this. I just want to start out with saying that, like, I've been to the crisis intervention team trainings. These are trainings given to police officers for the purposes of training people to, like, respond calmly under duress. And at the end of the day, watching these protests, being part of these protests, at the end of the day, these are choices that the police officers are making to lean the other direction and cause harm where harm shouldn't be caused. I work here at Sound, and I've had reports of several clients saying that they were arrested or harmed by police officers during these protests, before these protests. And as a therapist, like, what am I supposed to tell them, right? It's not looking like it's getting any better. It's hard to, like, foster hope in a scenario where these injustices are occurring so often. So what do we say? What do I tell my friends when I'm bailing them out of jail? What do I tell my friends when they're having or coming off of this severe trauma of being brutalized by police? And so at the end of the day, like, I'm a social worker. I've had people call me names, throw things at me, threaten my life. And it's not even a small impulse for me to say, oh, I think I should react in a violent way towards them. I want to hold them. I want to tell them that I feel their pain, and I want to support them in finding that space of healing. But we can't heal in the space where these injustices continue occurring. And that's my comment on that.
Thank you so much. Our next person is Andre.
Yeah, hi. I guess I want to respond to Dr. Jill. I'm not a police officer. I work for Sound. But also Black from Renton, if I didn't cover that. So I kind of want to drive on what Kat was kind of saying about, it doesn't seem that there was a lot of nonviolent communication going on, and there doesn't seem that like there was a lot of compassion going on and things like that. You know, I mean, it would be hard for either side, I think, to reach out and say, I want to hold you, I want to actually try and connect with you. And I think maybe some of that was going on in the beginning, but also to kind of go to the psychological of this and say it seems like it would be hard to, I've been to protest as well, where, you know, it has been all the way peaceful. There hasn't been that much chaos. I know someone said that protests are supposed to be chaotic and all this, but I've been to protests where it hasn't been that chaotic. People, you know, could let their voices be heard, and, you know, you walk away and nothing happened and things like that. So I think it's doubly hard when you have a protest and then violent aspects happen out of this protest like a Trojan horse. So people who have good intentions and things like that, but then there are others, the few bad apples that was mentioned, you know, and that the few bad apples do things that are violent and not so good. And so it gets to a point on, how do you find the few bad apples? How do you delineate the few bad apples that are spawned from the protest? And that's all.
Thank you so much. And now we will go to Felicia Cross.
Did you unmute me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, okay. Hi, I'm Felicia Cross, and I'm going to speak on behalf of Felicia Cross right now. I'm sitting here listening, and I'm having a really hard time with what the message is. That I respect everybody's experience and their thoughts for coming out to the protest. But what really is the point? And I want to hear from like some of the people that Harmony or Megan. I don't want to call people out, but just wondering what positivity were you bringing to this protest? What was your goal? What goal was there for you to meet? What was your aspirations for moving forward from all of this? I have to just be honest and say, as I listen, I'm still hearing this one thing that this whole protest stems from, and that is the privilege that some have that others don't. And I'm hearing they didn't give me any water. They didn't. I mean, there's so much I'm hearing, and it's quite disturbing to me. I'll say this. I'm wondering, can anyone tell me what have they done to actually learn more about Seattle Police? Have you attended any of the citizen academies? Have you attended any of the community meetings that are put on throughout the month after month for every demographic, for everybody? What have you done to actually be a positive force with this whole mission? Or is it still about the George Floyd and the mission, or is it something else now? Because all I'm hearing is the police this, the police that. And true enough, I'm not saying for one moment that there doesn't need to be change within the system. Absolutely it does. But and everybody's entitled to protest and march, but what are you marching for? What are you looking for? What would be the answer for you based on what you're out there for? I'm just taking some notes and having a hard time with the privilege I hear in the speakers. I'm not hearing. Here I am. I'm a Black woman, and it hurts my heart what's going on with policing. I have police throughout my entire family across this world, across the United States, and I'm just not getting what I need out of this conversation. I'm sorry. Thank you.
So is there any hands like that?
Ainsley.
It's Coney. Let's go to Coney. And then we go to Seth.
Go ahead.
Coney, you're unmuted. Can you hear us?
Coney.
We still can't hear you.
Go ahead.
Does she have headphones in?
Yeah, but we can't hear her now. No, you're not now, Aisling. Should be.
No, you're not.
Go ahead. Try it now. Let's work with it a little bit more. And Seth, go ahead.
Hi again. I will try to be coherent with this. I want to respond to what was just said by Felicia. Absolutely, there is a privilege in the way that our protests work in this country. If you look to see what's happening in Lebanon right now, we see what's happening in Belarus right now. As I mentioned earlier, doing work in Palestine, what's happening there. People who are arrested are routinely tortured in ways that we don't know here. People experience live round, or people are hit with live rounds of ammunition. Absolutely, but I think that's kind of a ridiculous characterization of what we should be upholding our standards to, of whether we should be arguing whether to deserve water or not. And in terms of involvement, I can at least speak for myself. I came to those protests to witness, to see what happens, and to support a larger movement than myself. I have been involved in certain different aspects of this for years. I've worked with classes at the University of Washington, bringing in youth and police officers to discuss the way that justice works in this country. And often what comes out of those conversations is a incredible distrust for police departments for a historic lack of accountability. And I think that's one of those things that I would like to bring up here, that those methods that we're talking about, right, of accountability for the police departments fall on deaf ears given the fact that there is no oversight. Police oversight is organized by themselves, their internal audits, and now it's federal, but we as civilians have no ability to see what happens there. We do not have, I mean, for example, the black man who was shot by SPD, I think over a month ago now, the name was released yesterday. The family was not given notice until last week. There is no collection of data that is open to the public on police abuse and police killings. So in terms of my own participation, I have done work and advocated. I've talked to the people who are survivors of abuse in the United States and abroad of police and military violence. And to be perfectly frank, I don't understand the benefit of trying to reform a department who has consistently refused reform, and there is no evidence that reform works from any of the research. Trainings have minimal effect. The only trainings that have demonstrated effect is larger arrest sizes and further accuracy in abusive tactics. And I would like to see ways for civilians to have full oversight of SPD's accountability process. I would love to see that SPD's files are open, both in terms of these protests of how many crowd munitions they're using on protesters, right? What they're even using, because to be perfectly frank, we don't know what the chemicals are they're using. We don't have research on the long-term effects of tear gas, whether it's OC or CS gas on protesters, right? That's something that is entirely unknown to the scientific world. I'd love to see oversight of how many people they're arresting and releasing, right? How many injuries are being documented and how many people are not actually getting access to medications in the jails. The jail services, as responded earlier, are as said earlier, are private health services. So, you know, those don't have oversight of King County Public Health. So we don't know what's happening in there. I feel like there is more, and I will type it in the chat if I'm able to. Again, I apologize. I am now in week 3 of a severe concussion. I'm still unable to see a screen for more than 5 minutes without feeling dizzy. So thank you for the time.
Thank you, Seth. I'm sorry to hear that. I think, are we gonna see if hers is working yet? Or no?
Yeah. Go ahead, Victoria.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
yes, go ahead. We can hear you.
I apologize. I'm late. I had another meeting, but so I haven't heard a lot of the comments. But after hearing Felicia, I'm sure her and I think the same way. We talk about it, so I'm sure it's the same old thing. So mine is just a comment. I was down at CHOP almost every day, and I know what I saw. I know what I witnessed, and I don't have pity or sympathy for some of the protesters as I stood there during the night watching them throw the frozen water bottles, the rocks, and everything else, taunting the police. And I'm not 100% for the police either. I have my issues with them. I'm pissed, but I want to bridge that gap. So what do you expect them to do when they're being attacked like that? And I saw some police officers that seemed pretty aggressive to me. It was both sides, but I want to make another point here. Every protest that was put on by the Black community was peaceful. Not one incident, not even the police didn't even have to show up. And this movement has been hijacked big time by these white protesters. And I'm sick of it. I want our movement back. Their protests mean nothing to me. Don't protest on our behalf, on the Black community's behalf, because we're not violent. We don't work that way. We want to be heard. The whole focus has been taken off of the murder of our Black men, women, and children. And we want to focus back on that, not about their whining about this and that. If you want to protest peacefully with us, but don't do this on behalf of us. So some of you out there, you knew that it was going to be violent like that because you came out with that agenda. So I'm furious about all of this. And Felicia's right. Get involved. Go to the academies. I'm the chair of the African American Community Advisory Council. We have discussions. You know, I feel like our whole focus is gone. And now that we've lost our chief, I think we're going to go backwards. And I blame a lot of this on the protesters, right along with our city council and the mayor.
Thank you so much, Victoria. Now we're going to go to the next person. We're going to see if your mic is her mic working?
Yeah, I think so.
Connie?
Go ahead, Connie. Aisley.
Aisley? I don't think. Try. Hello? Can you?
Go ahead, Ainsley.
Maybe she's on the phone and yes, she is on the phone. Let's look for her number. That's what I'm thinking would happen. I'm on the phone. Let's unmute her on the phone. Where is she at? Caller, that does not help. Caller 1, 2, caller 3. Give us the phone number. Maybe, yeah.
Is it still Aisley?
Aisley, is this you?
This is Harriet. Oh,
this is Harriet.
Oh.
Hey. Oh my
Okay.
God, you know, I dropped in from outer space. All right, thank you so much for giving me a minute. I'm going to speak in my own capacity as the founder of Mothers for Police Accountability and not as my other capacity that we all know that I'm involved with. I want to speak because one of the things that I want to say is that everybody's reality is true for them. And I was not out there, but true transparency, Omai Salisbury is my son. And I was out there, I saw him on the Saturday night, that first Saturday, the second Saturday night, whichever Saturday night it was, is he called for Mayor Jenny Durkin to calm it down, They were really aggressive out there. He called for the city council people. He called for the government people to show up. Some people did show up that night, and then it did calm down. Then the next night, council member that over the district there, where Capitol Hill in the central area, showed up and actually escalated the event. Did not calm it down. This particular elected official escalated the event, and after that, all this stuff went down. A whole bunch of stuff went down. I did see that. And then on the 25th, my son got robbed. But what is it? He got hit more than once. He was trying to help somebody move, a handicapped person try to move, and he got hit again. He got hit with the spray, and I guess that was when they did the OC spray the first time, because a person behind him was handicapped, and he was trying to help that person. And then because he's live screaming this all the time, so this is out there. And then the other thing that happened was on the 25th. I didn't see that, but that's when it really went down. I mean, that's when people was calling me, and that's because he really got hurt. That whatever they used, his body was burning all night long. And so he's had some incident, but he's an independent journal, so he just keeps moving forward. But what I want to say is that I've seen this before, and Howard Gale had seen it before. It's 1999. It's called the WTO. And when the rank and file and the leadership want to get rid of the police chief, what they do is do a mutiny. And what I hear right now is part of the mutiny. It's a plan. They use it all over America. And so if you make the chief look bad, eventually, but what we saw here in Seattle is a perfect storm. I mean, you had the mayor, the mayor's office, the East precinct got shut down. We're the people who said it belongs to us. It belongs to the African American community, because before Sam Smith, there was no police services in the central area. Our Capitol Hill, by the way, all the cars had to come from downtown Seattle. That's how you got service. And a black man is the reason why you have the 23rd, why you have the East precinct over there. And they wanted to give it away. The representative of that area called me and wanted to know if they could turn it into a community center. I used a bad word. I said no, because it belongs to the black community, and it serves 120,000 people. So why would you, as an elected official, want to close that precinct and not have any service over there? So I'm gonna get to my main point right now. My main point is what I saw was mutiny, and the mutiny started on May 29th. When there was no police involved around as the young people, and I call that, these are young Caucasians. If black kids had been tearing up the International District, they would have been arrested. And we do have to talk about privilege here, and that privilege is that sometimes they let people do all this tearing up stuff and no arrest is made. No arrest is made. And then if it was black kids doing that, arrest would be made. But this is my third mutiny. I've been doing this for 30 years. And when you get ready to do a police chief, you do a mutiny, and at that mutiny, officers go off. They know they're being investigated. They know there's going to be some, it will be some reprimand. But the fallout, what they wanted to happen has already happened. As of September 2nd, there'll be another police chief in town, and we'll see how that goes. But there are some serious problems as it relates to leadership in the guild. And what happens when they want to do something. What I've heard today is none of the stuff we talked about here today is in policy. None. None of this is in any kind of policy in America. It's not in policy. Now, did they practice what they do that? Did they do it? I mean, from what we're hearing, but it's not part of policy. It's no policy that says you can just go do this to people and do it and leave them this way. So, I want to offer my, hey, anybody who's been hurt, I understand that, and I want to let you know that personally, as a mother, and I heard my son out there, I understand all of that. I really do, but I understand what's going on the political side and on the police side. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Reverend Walden. We are going to now.
Hello? Can you hear me now?
But how do you meet everyone else?
I will.
Are you?
Hello?
Ainsley?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Go ahead.
I don't want to hear her anymore.
Can you hear me?
People need to mute.
Now
We're having
the other
trouble finding
page.
you,
She's on
Ainsley.
the other page. And she was.
Okay,
go ahead, Ainsley. Is that you?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we found you.
Okay. So,
sorry about that.
Victoria, no worries. Felicia Victoria, thank you so much for speaking. I do want to recognize my privilege, and I do want to recognize that what happened to me could have been much worse if I didn't have my privilege. And I totally understand where you're coming from, and I'm glad to hear from you, and I'm glad to hear your perspective. So thank you for speaking. Thank you for reminding myself and everyone of my privilege. I do have that. I also have a lot of experience with law enforcement. My father is in prison for life, and that has had a deep impact on how I grew up. And more than that, I'm just in these, and I think I speak for also Megan and Harmony. I think we kind of are have the same idea here, where we are there to support. I know you feel you don't like the destruction by some white actors, and I just want you to know that even if I was, but I wasn't involved in those things, and yet I experienced the brutality. And I don't think it's whining or complaining to speak up at an OIG meeting about the police response to protests. In fact, I don't really know why we're criticizing protesters at this moment, though, because it is about the police response, and that's why we called in, and that's why we're speaking, not to whine and complain, but to bring the experiences as we were asked. And so, yes, I do respect and hear your opinions, and I do accept my privilege, and I think it could have been worse without that, and I speak for the others, Megan and Harmony as well, I think, when I say that. But so finally, yeah, I don't think it's a matter of discussing whether or not protesters are good or bad. This call is about what the police have done, good or bad, and I personally have just seen a lot more bad. And being beaten with a baton and arrested and held in handcuffs for 5 to 6 hours and then held overnight in a holding cell for 18 hours, like, I don't feel that I'm whining and complaining. I feel that I'm speaking up about what's happening. But I do recognize my privilege in that. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much for speaking. I really do appreciate that and sticking in there trying to get on the phone and do all that you can so we can hear you. I appreciate that. And you're right. This is here to hear from community about SPD. So thanks for refocusing us for sure. This is our last person we're taking, and that's Megan Berry.
I actually didn't think I'd end up being able to speak again, but I did want to say to Felicia, I hear what you're saying, and I take that to heart, and I am trying to learn more about like what my privilege means, and I apologize if you felt silenced. That's not at all my intention. Like Ashing mentioned, this particular meeting is specifically talking about the police brutality. And so even though my experience was nowhere near as bad as other protesters or what many Black and Indigenous and people of color have experienced, not just recently, but for hundreds and hundreds of years, I know that. I do feel that it's important as a white person to lend my voice in a way, but I never want to do that in a way that makes someone else feel unheard. So I apologize if that's how it came across.
So I would like to really say thank you to everyone who has come on and to give their opinion, their experience, what they've, and their story and their truth. I really do appreciate everyone for being brave and strong enough to share. It is our hope with the accountability systems here for Seattle to really make sure we're hearing from community and hearing your voice and being able to put some of those things into place to make sure that everyone is feeling protected. And I think that we also wanted to say thank you to the director of Sound Mental Health and for all the commissioners of CPC and to CPC and OPA and OIG. We also wanted to remind you that if you have more updates and information, if you'd like to give even more information about your experience, you can go to the OIG website and go under the Sentinel review. I believe there is a link, the community portion. There is a link in the chat room to get you directly there. And so I just wanted to really thank all those who have participated today. And during these times, I really am hoping that we can find solutions. It's a really crazy time, but I also believe that these are the times where accountability, things are happening, things are shaking up. This is a time for change to happen. The way that our accountability system works right now is because of those folks in community who have asked for it to be this way. So if change does need to happen, it happens with community making that change happen. So this is the time, I truly believe. So thank you so much for coming, and I pray for everyone to be safe.